What's this episode about, ma'am?
Um, your the difference between your ego self and your higher self. Because I feel like before you can even talk about meditation or what type you do or where to
What
like
type you
even
do?
like what kind of meditation you choose or just like meditation in
I
general.
mean, yeah, literally the first sentence you just said.
Right. I feel like just like before you even think about that or talk about it, you have to know what the difference is.
Um,
Because it's like, what are you battling or what are you like, what are you trying to get to, I guess, if you like don't even know. Because like meditation is like mostly,
wait, what? You lost me.
feel
What'd you say?
like, I feel like you have to start with your ego self and higher self because like before you meditate, like what are you even like meditating on essentially? Like are you just meditating on like random things? Like I feel
Sure.
like, but don't, I mean, yes, because like I think once you get to a certain spot in meditation, you can meditate on all different things. But I think like in order to like start the meditation process of even being mindful of
That's if you're doing a mindful meditation. You don't have to be mindful to meditate. You don't have to do a mindful meditation.
yeah, you got a tractor.
It's advised.
Go show. Go play with your farm with it. I'm not gonna get down.
What? Can you wait like 10, 15 minutes? What? Can you wait like 10, 15 minutes? Yeah, in a little bit.
um I guess for me personally, I feel like mindfulness and meditation are one thing.
They're not. That's just the way that you're choosing to meditate. There are types of meditation where you're in a flow state. So people who play basketball are not necessarily being mindful when they're in a flow state, going hard in the paint. They're just focused on getting the job done.
Yeah, I guess
You
that's
don't have to
true, but
meditate in mindfulness. You don't have to be like that. I guess I don't even know what mindfulness technically means, so I can't like elaborate.
what would you say meditation means? Like, what would you
Awareness.
say?
It's literally what
Okay,
meditation is.
I
It's
guess that
awareness.
was kind of what I was thinking. That's more of what I was thinking of than mindfulness. I guess I kind of use those interchangeably too, which is not really.
I don't know what mindfulness is.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna, yeah.
For some reason, I want to say like thoughtful, but I also feel like that's not true.
Oh, it's literally the quality or state of being conscious or aware of something. So, like, it is. Mindfulness and awareness is essentially the same thing. Okay. Oh, so mindfulness, this is the second definition of it. A mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily
So
sensations.
that's what I thought it was. I thought it was a feeling thing. I thought it was like an emotional thing. But I mean, I guess any emotion. I don't know. I have no idea. I couldn't explain mindfulness, so I guess that my argument was invalid if I didn't even know what the word meant.
Well, I guess, well, because I was using, like, I was thinking awareness when I was saying mindfulness. So it's like, I don't really know if they can be used interchangeably,
Yeah, I'm
I
not
guess.
sure.
So it's like, either way.
Right.
I feel like, yeah, I feel like you have to know the difference between what your ego self and what your higher self is before you meditate. Do you agree or disagree? Or
I
do you think that can be.
I don't agree. Uh, again, I think it's one of those things where it's advised, but people meditate all the time and don't know they're meditating. So it's like it's one of those things where like,
Valid.
how deep do you want to meditate? If you want to meditate spiritually, then you have to know the difference between your ego and your higher self. If you don't want to meditate spiritually and you just want to meditate to get your daily stressors out of the way and all that stuff. I don't think you need to know the difference between.
So it's
You
like
should.
the level of your like the level that you want to meditate at is really what.
Yeah, what's your goal?
Like,
It depends on what
yeah.
your goal is.
I guess, which is kind of what I said at the beginning, just not in those words. I was like, what are you meditating for? Like, what is your goal?
Right.
What are you trying to get to? And I guess for me, when we talk about meditation, I feel like we are always talking about the difference between your ego self and your higher self. Even if we aren't like specifically saying like one or the other.
Like when me and you talk about.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because that's what we were dealing with. That's
Right.
what we were trying to meditate for. That was my goal on meditation, was to have less of an ego. Not get rid of, but just have less of an ego. Not let that part of me be in control.
Right. So what would you say, like in your own words, what would you say your ego self is and what your higher self is?
What would you say?
The difference?
I mean, we can do one at a time. We don't have to do both. What would you say? Why do I gotta go first?
What? Why do I have to go first? For me, your ego is
No, I'm joking.
Your ego is what you're constantly fighting. Like your ego is what makes you scared of being judged by people. Your ego is like yeah, I feel like your ego is what you're always like is what you're fighting yourself on.
Fighting yourself?
Yeah.
Who's yourself?
Like I guess your ego is always fighting your higher self. And your ego is what is allowing you to make certain decisions because you're afraid of being judged if you just make the decision you want, or having less confidence in the things that you choose because it might look weird to others. I feel like that's kind of what ego is. Like, self-centeredness in like the negative form.
Isn't self-centered only negative?
Well, the other day we talked about how selfish shouldn't be used as a negative word.
Selfish.
So I was trying to say, I was going to say selfish, but I was like, no, because we had that whole conversation. But I think your ego also is what allows you to not take accountability for things. It's like playing the victim. I feel like that's a big ego thing, is like, well, I did this because this person did this, or I did this because of this. And it's like, you're not actually taking accountability for the fact that like, maybe you just fucking did that. Like, maybe that was you. Like,
yeah.
I think overall that's what ego is to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same ballpark. I think ego is your defense mechanism. It's like your protector. Ego is the part of you that doesn't like change. So people who are drastically trying to stay in the same situation are kind of just hiding within their ego, which is not a separate thing. It is who you are. It's all of your previous traumas and experiences and your identity. Like, it's how you are grounded to like earth. It's how you're grounded to your body is your ego. Like, again, it just like kind of.
Oh, you think your
protector.
ego grounds you to the earth?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of ego death? Those people get lost. Like, some
What
people
does
will
that mean?
look it up, because I don't have like a general definition, but some people will like do crazy drugs, crazy psychedelics, and they'll have an ego death It also happens with like yogis and people who go really hard
Oh,
into
a
meditation.
complete loss of subject and self identity.
You don't know who you are anymore, because in the reality of things, if you believe spiritually that you're more than just your body and more than just your mind, you're not this. So like when people take heavy drugs and stuff like that, things start to connect in certain ways, and they'll literally become separate from themselves. They'll no longer
Um,
be able to identify with.
their own being.
Yeah, because
Oh,
everything is
so
connected.
that's why
Everything
you're
is the
saying
same
your
thing.
ego connects you to.
Yeah, yeah,
Because it's
100%.
like
It's your
if you have an
safety net.
ego death, you
It's
have
your
no
safety
idea
net.
who you even are.
Yeah, people lose
Okay.
themselves. People literally just go crazy. But if you're somebody like a yogi or something, that's like kind of what you expect. You know who you are, but you really know that everything is one thing. Like everyone is the same thing. It's an
Okay.
interesting concept.
I didn't know what an ego death was. That makes it make a lot of sense because I was like, I think your higher self allows you to be grounded to earth. But
No,
when
you're
you put it that way, it's like your self identity is what,
so the way I
like,
perceive it is like your higher self is it's almost like a remote control. It's like you're being played by something else. It's like when you get into meditation and you do the aware of the awareness,
mm-hmm.
that level of comprehension has to be from a higher self. If you were just this, you couldn't be aware of the awareness. You know what I mean? Like
Right. Yeah,
you would
yeah,
be stuck
yeah.
only in this. But when you can meditate and you can kind of get out of your body and be aware of the fact that you're aware, then it's kind of almost guaranteed that there has to be another something else at play, because you can watch yourself think, which is like
Yeah.
confusing.
That's true. Yeah. Um, yeah. I think your higher self is what allows you to take accountability for like your own actions and like also just like take things as they are and not always like almost be like accepting of things. And this goes into like the victim role.
Yeah,
There
you're actually doing a good job. That's where let's flip it over.
you go.
Let go
No.
over there. How do you even get over here?
I
How are we
don't,
not frozen?
I don't know. I checked to make sure, like, because I moved my head and I was like, oh, you did the duck and weave. uh, I think your higher self is what, like, allows you to just take things as they are and, like, whether it's a negative or a positive, just like learn the lesson behind it. And your ego is like, if it's a negative, it's like, I could have done this differently, or this should have happened, or like anger comes from it. But when you're dealing with your higher self, it's like, whether it's negative or positive, there's something, there's a reason that happened. There's some sort of lesson behind that or some bigger goal behind that. And I think your higher self, when you are able to tune into it, allows you to see those things.
Yeah, I don't really have like I don't have a definition for higher self like I do for ego. Um, I think your higher self, like you said, your ego is kind of what worries about judgment, and it worries about judgment, which is still you. You worry about judgment based off of the past. When you think about the past, based off of all your experiences and et cetera, et cetera. But I lost my train of thought. Um, but um, your higher self. So here's a breaker. This is one that gets me confused, because al- there's almost sometimes where I think the higher self is not the higher self. The higher self is just the higher being, the higher energy, the source that that runs through all of us.
So it's not even you.
No,
Is what you're
it,
saying.
like it. No, it's not.
And that's why you're saying the ego,
The
like,
ego is
brings you to the
That's
earth.
who you are.
But
you
your
are
higher
your ego.
self is like the thoughts
It's
that
just you have to
can-
be able to manage your ego. Like I don't think you should get rid of your ego, and I don't think I think that even when you're engaging with things negative or positive, I still think that it's your ego because you immediately your first thought is to think about how this happened in the past. You just have to be able to get past that.
Right,
you
yeah.
can use that higher energy source of just like, well, it doesn't matter. Like I'm in the present and do whatever, but you can't, like, to my knowledge, unless you go through some type of ego death, you are your ego. That's who you are as on this planet. You can just learn to tame it. So I
through
don't
your
think it's
higher
like,
self, or just
yeah, that's who you talk to.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so
yeah.
when I meditate, some people say they hear voices, and some people they say they do all types of stuff.
Yeah, that's
but it's
true.
like for me, it's like you're tapping in to what everybody has access to. Everybody has access to that same energy. Not everybody has access to your ego because it's your experiences, it's what you've done.
That's
so that's
very
who
valid.
you
Okay,
are.
yeah.
But that higher energy or whatever is like, that's how I consider the higher self.
Do you think that your higher self allows you to live more authentically?
I don't know what authentic means. And I
It's like
say that
true to who, like, what you really want. I feel like that's authentic to me, like what you truly want deep down inside. Genuine, made or done in the traditional or original way, which I don't like that. We don't
that's
like.
that's why I'm
but,
like, because it's just like, what is authentic about a human? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I guess that's true.
there's
I guess
not much that's.
it's like,
I mean, somebody could say there's something authentic about a human, but it's just like, I don't know. The way I look at it is like, everybody's experience is unique, so it's like if somebody wants to do a bunch of negative things that are like knowingly negative, but that's just what they desire, that's what they really want to do.
that's authentic to them.
I wouldn't consider
Yeah.
that you use your higher self to
To
be
do
more
those things.
genuine
Right,
into
okay,
that
yeah, that
path.
makes sense.
So I don't think so. I don't think so.
I think your ego causes you to live like for other people and like how, like what they expect of you, I think.
No, because remember, ego is your experiences. So whatever your experiences in life happen is going to kind of, if you're not in control, if you're not in control of it, and you're just kind of going with that flow of, I'm going off of my ego's reaction, i.e. just your reactions because of past events. If you're living in the past essentially and living in the future, then damn it, I forgot the question. Was it even a question or statement?
I said, does your higher self allow you to live more authentically? But now that I really know what authentic is,
No, we said something else.
like-
I can't remember what it was though. We were on to something else.
I don't know.
I forgot. He was distracted
Over
me.
here living the time of his life.
Yeah, but even
Oh, I said, I think that ego causes you to live for other people.
oh right,
But
yeah,
you were
that's
like,
just,
no,
that's
it's
based
just...
on how your past. If you're living in the past and you're living in what might happen, then yes, like, but it's, I don't even think it's necessarily your ego or your higher self that causes these things. It's just your experiences, which everybody has something different. Because I
Right.
have almost never lived for other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I just do what I want to do.
Right. Right. Do you want me to tell you what this little Venn diagram says about ego, self, and higher self?
Tell me or tell the
Or
people.
tell
You can do
everyone.
You can do what you like. Insert image here.
So there's this like Venn diagram. Well, I call it a Venn diagram, even though there's no thing
There's no
comparing
words
them
in
in the center. No.
the hell?
But it says your ego self lives in victim mentality.
Your ego self lives in victim mentality.
Yep.
Before you roll, we'll try and elaborate on them if we can.
Right.
So your ego lives in victim mentality.
Which is kind of what I said, where it's like, if something negative happens, it's like, oh my, like, what could I have done, or what did this person do to make this happen to me? Like,
right. So that's
that
where
type
that's
of
where it
thing.
starts to get fishy, because this is something that I was doing when I first started meditating. I was just like, oh, it's my ego, it's my ego, it's my ego, and then it ends up being a crutch. So when you say something like that, is where your ego lives in victim mentality. I don't like that, just because it's you that lives in the victim mentality. You know what I mean? Like, you are your ego. That's what grounds you to earth. So when you say it like that, it's almost like you're blaming it on a
Right.
factor of life, but it's like you're just not in control of those emotions. So then you end up living in the victim card, which is something that's common. So it's like it's a
Yeah.
common trait that humans have, that I guess you could compare to the ego, but some people just don't do that. But they still have an ego, but it's based off of their past history, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
I mean,
But
unless you have anything to say.
no, I mean, I kind of said that as like what it was for me. That's
Right.
basically. This is also, I feel like, a judgment thing. It says scarcity mindset, which I feel like just goes along with, like, you're scared of being judged. You're scared of what other people are gonna think. You're not being like, you're not doing what you want or how you feel because you're just scared. Like,
What is scarcity?
scarcity mindset. Yeah.
Isn't that just like a lack of things? Scarcity is like not enough.
Maybe. LOL. Scarcity mentality causes symptoms and more from WebMD.
Just look up scarcity. We know what
I feel
mindset
like
is.
it's not gonna be the right, like,
Scarcity mindset. You just scarcity, and then that's the type of mindset you're in.
scarcity definition.
It's like a lack of.
It's
right?
shortage. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
state of being scarce or in short supply.
Yeah, I think that's just that's like essentially like goes along with the change thing that I was talking about earlier. Is like
It's okay. So this says a scarcity. It's just Google, the first thing that pops up. But a scarcity mindset is a belief or feeling that you do not have enough of something, such as time, money, or connection.
yeah. That's where I was at.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
yeah. Like, not
I don't
enough
got enough
of
time.
something. Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Waste all my
That's
time.
true.
Like I don't got enough of it. Might as well waste it. You know.
And
type.
for me, I think of it um as a judgment thing of, like, who do you not have enough time, money, and connection for? Yourself or for others? Like, who are you saying that about? Like, that type of, that's why I use judgment in that, where it's like, in regards to who? Like, like, to yourself, to
Wait, what? You lost me.
where it's saying, like, you don't have enough, like, time, money, connection, like that type of stuff, but it's like in comparison to who. And that's where I feel like the judgment thing comes in, where it's like you're afraid of being judged. Like, do you not have enough money comparatively to others? Do you not have enough time comparatively to others?
It
Like,
doesn't have to be comparative to others in those specific senses, because it doesn't matter how much time, or I mean, for these examples, time or money somebody else has. It's just based off of you think that you have a scarcity to survive. Like, the ego is the defense mechanism. It's scared of change. It wants to be in that comfort zone, i.e., you as a human, as most creatures, you want to live and thrive. So if you feel like you're getting scarcity, then that kind of like messes you up. You know what I mean?
yeah, that's true.
I don't think it has to be comparatively to someone else. I think it's just comparatively to being able to live. You know what I mean? If you don't think you have enough time, it's just like, well, then what am I going to do? Like,
Right. And
it's
then as
not
humans,
comparatively
like
to
you
somebody
said,
else.
we just tend to then waste the time that we do have, or overthink, or
Maybe
whatever it
not.
may be.
Maybe
Maybe not
I
waste,
said
but
waste, but maybe waste isn't a good word. I was wasting, but you want to watch Miss Rachel? Rachel.
Rachel.
Just not I mean, for some people, they just won't spend their time wisely, and some people, that's a kick in the butt to spend their time more wisely. You know what I mean? It just
Yeah, I
depends
guess
on
it's
your situation, it's like
Right.
what your examples are, and what kind of person you are, and apparently, you're freaking zodiac and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Everything's accounted for.
I want to do like a whole podcast on that because that's just wild. Like it just like
We don't know nothing.
right. Um, the next one is that your ego self sees mistakes.
Ego self sees.
So comparatively, yeah, an elephant. Yeah, I can get you juicy.
I mean,
So, well, in comparison, it's just when you look at this picture, it's like your ego self sees mistakes and your higher self sees the lessons. So it's like when you're
well,
doing
yeah,
it
you gotta
that
say it like
way.
that. Then
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
irrelevant if you don't say it that
yeah.
way.
Right, right. So that's why I was like,
I'm like,
like
what do
it
you
does
mean?
make a lot of sense, but not really. Like,
Yeah,
which is just, yeah, it's like I
yeah.
said, it's like, oh, that happened.
That's
Like,
where I'm getting to. That's like, there's not technically anything negative or positive. I mean, there is because there has to be yin and yang, but there isn't because everything is within something. You can always gain something from something, no matter if you can see it immediately or not. Most of the time, if you can't see it, you're too grounded to earth in the sense of the ego, not in the sense of like the universe. It's an interesting concept.
so the last thing on the little diagram. So your ego self complains about everything, and your higher self is grateful and finds joy in the little moments.
Yeah, I'm starting to not agree with this. I'm starting to feel like you just are your ego, and all you're doing is taming the ego. Like, you're born into this world and you have no ego. Like, you just don't have anything. All you have is that source energy, the consciousness being able to exist. And then you create an ego to survive in your environment. And then you can't get rid of that. You have to survive in your environment. But what you can do, yes. But what you can do is you can take that higher self, which I'm starting to lean towards, that higher energy, that main source of energy that we all have.
The straw got him.
And you take that higher source of energy and then you can manipulate. I don't know, I guess that's a decent word, but you can restructure your ego. You're reprogramming your ego to fit what you desire. So it's like, can you read those again?
Okay, so I'm gonna read them side by. You
Yeah,
want
you can
all
go from the
of
top.
them?
Yeah, you can go
Okay.
from the top. Yeah.
So your ego self lives in the victim mentality, and your higher self takes accountability to create a different reality. So,
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what I'm saying. It's like,
mhm. Like you're
you good, Lou?
slow it down a little, buddy. It's a straw.
Yeah, it's essentially like you you naturally are that original source of energy. We
Which is
all
your
have
ego.
we all have the capability of accessing what we came into this world with. Only the higher self, which again I don't even like that word anymore because then it individualizes it, but I really think that it's just the higher power, the higher energy. Some people call it God. I'm starting to lean that way. Some people call it source, like whatever that main thing is that gives us consciousness and the ability to interact like that. And then you just, like, your ego is like a cocoon just to make sure you're safe and helps you grow.
So you're saying that your higher self is what you're born into, and then you
You're
form your
you're
ego.
just energy, like that higher. That again, that's why don't even want to use higher self. It's just like the higher energy that you are born in with. Everybody has that default. I think I said that last time. It's like you're just born in. You got that default baby mode or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And then every time an event happens, whether you're aware or not, you
it's
start to build
that.
this ego, this kind of structure, and then that's you. And that's what you identify as now. Because if you didn't have that, then you wouldn't identify as anything. So like people who have that ego death lose this and are connected straight to the source, connected straight to that one energy source. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's again, that happens with a lot of the yogis and high meditators, where you get like that feeling of oneness or whatever, where like you realize that this is this and this is this, and like, you know what I mean? Like everything just becomes one, I guess not solid, but one flowing entity.
I saw a picture the other day that was like, I forget exactly what it said, but it was like all parts of your body are listening. And it was like a picture of the brain, a picture of like your lungs, a picture of just like different organs.
Every cell
like
in your body is listening.
Yeah, and it's like literally like
every cell in your body is listening,
right,
to create who you are. Again, it's what we do.
Right.
We just overlook it. I mean, look at some of these animals. You're like, how do they do some of these things? But if you break it down in this type of way, it's like, okay, they're tapped in.
Yeah, it's a giraffe. You're right. Nice job, buddy. So the next one is your ego self has the scarcity mindset and your higher self has the abundance mindset. Yep. Which is like, just in itself,
especially if you believe in manifestation and stuff like that, the ego, just the body that you're in isn't manifesting stuff. That higher energy is manifesting stuff. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is why I do the thing every night. I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. Very helpful.
It was always so cute when you would first say like, we are abundance, and he says abundance. It's like so cute. Yeah, I wish I still did them. I mean,
over time,
more,
I'm just saying I wish he still did them, just because it's cute.
It was so cute. But we are abundance. This is kind of like was my main way to differentiate the ego self and higher self, was that your ego self sees mistakes and your higher self sees lessons. And it's just like I said, like your ego self is always not always, because it's just not an always and never thing, but I think your ego self is more apt to take on the negative and like run with that, but your higher self, even if it is like a negative situation, it's like, well, this could come of it, or there's something better for me, or it's like your ego sometimes makes you stay stagnant, and your higher self allows you to be like, well, this is happening for a reason, like good or bad, like clearly something is in the works. Essentially,
we have that survival instinct, and that makes us just want to, like, we've created this whole structure of living that is not normal. Like, look at every other animal. No animal lives the way that a human does. No. And it's like, to some people it's like, well, that's great, and to some other people it's like, yeah, it's great, but there are plenty of other alternative ways that we could have taken the route. We just chose to take this one. Right. And with that, it makes it makes the ego almost weak. Like,
so I was just gonna say, do you think it was our egos that made us live the way we live now, like that guided us towards this like weird, like this, like, I don't know, simple stuff like going to the grocery store and having like thousands of strawberries opposed to like having a farmer's stand, like these are organic, these were made in like the
No, I don't think it's something as simple as like, do you think it was our egos that caused those things? Like, we all have egos which lead us to make rash decisions. Yeah. Very weird decisions. But again, like I was saying before, there's not really always a negative or there's you don't always see the fact that there's a negative and positive in things. So a lot of times people could literally just be, most of the time people do something wrong, they think they're doing something right. Like, I'll say that. Like, not all the time. There are definitely people who just do negative things on purpose. But there are some people, well, again, it could be perceived as negative, but in their brain, based off of their ego, the way that they grew up,
Like,
i.e.
I'm
just
supposed
them,
to do. This is, yeah.
that's just how you live. So it's like, do I think I mean, yeah, but again, it's a survival instinct. Like, the ego is just you trying to survive. That's really what it is. Like, you're just trying to be alive, and sometimes you end up getting like a complex when it gets more elaborate because we're in this structure. So it's like your ego is supposed to just be survival, but then we add all these extra like hurdles and things to distract
and you think you have to do so many other things than just
yeah, exactly. So it's like
be, essentially.
the society that we live in kind of attacks that and forces you to create this bigger shell than is necessary, in my opinion.
Right.
Which is why some animals are just okay. They'll do their best to try and survive and something like that, but in certain situations where they know it's over, they're just kind of like okay with it.
They're like vibing.
They're like, well, this is it.
Right.
You know what I
It's
mean?
my
But humans
time.
are just like I'm better than this.
Literally.
You know what I mean? It's just like, no offense. I mean, everybody's got to survive. But like,
I just thought of
it just gets wild.
It's not relevant at all, but I just thought of SpongeBob running around because he forgot his name. Oh God. And the last one again is your ego self.
Thank you.
Your ego self complains about everything, and your higher self is grateful and finds the joy in the little moments. Where it's like, I guess some, like, for me, I think of like, if you're outside and it's like cold, it's like, dang, it's so freaking cold out here. But it's like, some people are like, wow, like, look how nice it is outside. Like, I have the ability to breathe in like fresh air.
Yeah,
I have a coat on right now.
Right,
Like, I have.
Yeah.
I can look up at the stars. Like, I was saying, like, your ego, like, complaining about everything, like, like, for me, a good example is like, you go outside and it's cold, and it's like your ego's like, oh my God, it's freezing, like, I gotta go back inside. Like,
it's that wording that just keeps almost stressing me out. It's not like it's not your ego that's like, it's
right,
you.
it's just you're like, oh my, right,
You're out there and you're just like not grateful of other things. There are other things to worry about, but we're choosing to focus on the negative thing, which is apparently seemingly the ego. But I did not know that I was even going to take this approach in the beginning of this. But by the end of this, I no longer like ego and higher self. It's just, it's you and source.
Yeah, soon, okay? We're almost done. Come here. You want to sit with me? What?
And I think it's only because I struggled with it in the beginning. It was just like, I learned about it and then I was just like, oh, okay, these are ego type things. That's why I'm doing this. But it's just like, I have the ability to change that. Like me, I have the ability to change that. So it's like, you can't blame it on something else because you have to remember that you're able to change it. And some people will say like, oh, I don't have access to source. Nobody talks to me. You know what I mean? Like, some people don't get the concept of meditation. So it's like, you can still understand the difference without having to meditate if you don't use ego and higher self, because that higher self is looked at as spiritual. And I mean, I guess even the source or whatever is looked at as spiritual, but if you want to just chop it up to conscious intelligence, like,
oh, okay, yeah,
you know what I mean, like, make it more scientific as opposed to just what is the higher self, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's confusing to me now. In the beginning, I was all for it. Again, I didn't know I was going to take this approach.
So what do you think it means to be enlightened then?
What do I think it means to be enlightened? I have no idea what it means to be enlightened. I don't think you could look up a definition for enlightenment. Like Sadhguru would tell you enlightenment is something completely different than, like, we can't be enlightened. Like, we can strive for enlightenment. Enlightenment to me is just like maximum awareness, which like our brains just can't handle. So like we can't reach enlightenment, which is why like there's a goal, because it just lets you grow every day. As long as you're trying to be more aware of what you're doing every day and constantly growing in that way, that's what enlightenment is to me. You just will never reach the top in this body, not as a human.
That makes sense. It's just like to have spiritual knowledge essentially and just know, like, trying to attain more, I guess. So now that we've had this discussion, like you said, you wouldn't differentiate like ego and higher self. You would use what terms?
I wouldn't differentiate.
Or
I
like you
would differentiate
wouldn't
them.
you
I just don't
wouldn't
like the words.
right, so like what words would you use instead?
You,
You said you
I,
and consciousness. Is that what you said? You
um,
used consciousness.
yeah, I said
Is
like
that
your conscious intelligence, like,
Yeah. I hear.
because if you just say consciousness, it gets even more confusing. Because what is consciousness? And it's just like, are animals conscious? I think so, but if you look at quantum physics, this table's conscious. So
So awareness? Can
that's
it be you
that's why
and
I say that's why I
awareness?
say conscious intelligence.
Oh, okay.
But then if you look at the double slit experiment,
Oh, jeez. It's like,
they're aware.
yeah.
So that's what
So
I mean. Like, we think of ourselves as so much better than what we are.
right.
You know, I mean, like, we're great, we're amazing. Like, we think of ourselves less than what we are, and then at the same time, we think of ourselves way better than what we are, which is very confusing. Like, it's extremely confusing.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's an odd concept. Like, everything is equal, but no one wants to agree with that. So it's just like
That is true.
trying
That
to
is true. Like,
find that, and that's why like using like everybody comes from the same source of intelligence, like consciousness. You're alive, you can see, you can hear, you can react to that, unless you have some type of disability, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And even then you have other things that still let you be consciously intelligent. um, it's just a weird concept. And again, we live in a structure where like the things we think matter don't necessarily matter. So because a certain person with a disability can't do X, Y, Z in our structure of life, we look at them different. But like, if the world was made in a different way, they
Then they
could be
would
8 million
excel
times
in
better, and
weirdom, or we don't do things properly, or
exactly.
we don't make sense.
It's exactly.
Okay.
It gets really confusing real fast.
Soon, buddy.
It's an extreme set of concepts, to say the least.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I have a whole new, like, I feel like we have to have this whole discussion again because now I'm just like, what I thought, like, it is still true how I feel. But like you said, like, ego is not the right word.
And again, it could be to some, because again, when I first started meditating, that's what helped me. That's why I was like, I didn't think I was gonna have this approach. Like, I'm all for the ego and higher self separation. It helped me understand. But now I have such a different level of understanding.
So,
I'm like, I don't know if I like this anymore.
was there, like, when you first started meditating, you meditated like all the time.
Yeah.
Was there like one time that you meditated that it like clicked for you where it was like, not that you were just changed because like you literally did like a 180 flip in like a second, but like, was there a time during your meditation where you were like, how do I word this? You I guess like where in your meditation did you decide like I'm not just living for me and like everything is conscious, everything is me, like
I mean, it wasn't just through meditation. It was also through um, research. When I wanted to start learning about quantum physics, it was really learning about quantum physics. You learn about quantum physics, your whole life changes. And I didn't even like know it, but you just like you learn a couple of things and you're like, this doesn't make sense.
yeah, that's very true. But what even drew you to the quantum physics to begin with? Because like you weren't into quantum physics like before you started like
Right.
meditating,
But
you
I
know,
I
like
liked extraterrestrials. I liked. I've always been interested in religion. You know what I mean? Like, if somebody's got words for me, I'll listen. But I'm not doing no deep dives realistically.
right.
But once once I started meditating, I tried to find other people who meditated, who gave advice on meditation, whether it was they were religious or spiritual. And within that, I
You
found
chose what
I
you
found people who could who brought science to meditation, and people like Billy Carson, Dr. Greer. They like again. As I was meditating all the time. As soon as I wasn't meditating, I'm watching Dr. Greer lectures. Like, you know what I
right,
mean? And
right,
it was
right,
like
right.
on science. It wasn't just spirituality. I was choosing the science ones. Like, oh, how can I actually get some facts behind this? Then he says something that I can go look it up and see that there are actually people doing real tests and real research on these things. And then I found Billy Carson, he doesn't like to believe anything unless it's backed by science. Like, and like nothing
Which
is
I
magic.
which I appreciate. I I don't want to say like I don't typically like the people that you listen to or watch, but like I struggled to stay, what is the word? Like
Engaged.
yes, I struggled to stay engaged. Also cuz sometimes the people that you watch I just feel really dumb. Like I just like don't really know what they're saying, but Billy Carson is very smart but explains things in a way. Tilt the cup down, buddy. Tilt the cup down. There you go. um, Billy Carson just explains things in a way that no matter what he's talking about, like you can understand it. And he doesn't like just the way that he speaks and the way that he holds and carries himself. You don't feel like he's judging or
Like trying to
attacking
be
or
better
like
than you or anything
yeah,
like
it's
that.
just
Yeah.
like this is what it
Here's the
is.
facts.
This is why
Go
it's
look it
this
up.
way. Right. And I'm going to give you resources X, Y, and Z to tell you why, which is again something that I
Everyone should have.
strive,
Everyone
right.
should
And
have
I
that.
also strive to look for with the people that I listen to. Like I listen to Maya Bialik, and her whole podcast is Maya Bialik's breakdown. Like she'll break it down so that you don't have to. And it's like she's a doctor and she's literally like in the easiest way explaining to you like why you might feel a certain way during a certain time. And it's like you just definitely need people like that where you can stay like in tune and like understand where they're coming from. You're like, oh dang, it just makes you look at things a little bit different.
So sometimes the people that I watch that you don't understand, like you don't know what they're saying, sometimes like they're pretty deep, but sometimes, actually quite often, I'll be listening to them and then it will coincide with
Oh,
a
with
Billy
the other,
Carson
yeah,
or somebody
that is very
who's
valid.
not talking about the exact same thing, but
But
can
it can
just
make
say
you
like one,
click.
two words,
Something can click
and
in, and you're like, oh,
everything kind
that
of like
makes sense.
merges together immediately. So
That
yeah,
is true.
it was just meditation. Obviously, a lot of meditation. You meditate on all the things you learn, and I chose people who are not talking about. I don't want to say nonsense because like to each his own, but like who are like just really diving in. I chose people who are really diving into stuff. Like
And also, it was cool for me because I like tarot cards. I like those things. I like stones, I guess, or gems. I don't know the proper verbiage to use
Crystals?
there. Crystals, yeah, crystals. Um, I like all that stuff, and you have the Thoth book from Billy Carson, like teaching you all about Thoth and all that. And when I got my first tarot deck card, it was like it originated
Oh, right.
from Thoth. And it was like, whoa. Like, so that's just like in itself, it's just like, even though you might not be going down the exact same, like we might not be taking the exact same path of things, it's like it, like you said, everything
Something
is
will
interconnected.
everything's connected.
Everything like
You'll find
somehow it all
it'll
comes
come back.
together.
It'll all
Right.
come back. As
For
above,
sure.
so below. So within, so without.
So crazy and so cool.
So crazy.
and so cool, you know, like when you just grasp it, you're like, wow,
Yeah.
what a life. Like
Yeah.
literally what a life.
Life is divine. Without a doubt.
For sure.
Hands down. I had notes over here and I'm reading them and they look all types of confusing.
Like you didn't even know what you wanted to say, or
Well, no, I was making sure I had points so that I did like. I'm not used to talking like this, so
Right.
I'll just make sure I had points and I wouldn't use a single one of these.
well, we also, like you said, like we just changed like the whole course of like how we actually, well, you specifically changed the whole course of kind of how you felt. It was just like some of those aren't even relevant anymore.
Like this, I had something about ego. I'm gonna read it. I don't even know if I understand it. Ego is a safety net, not your reality. Your thoughts are not your own. Pride is just ego with a fancy name. Complaining works. Complaining works when people validate your emotions, but you feel even worse if they don't, unless lying sometimes comes into play. Oh, wait, no, unless I said where lying sometimes comes into play. That's what I was telling you a while ago, that I was noticing from people. Like, the only reason you complain is kind of to protect that ego.
And then, like you said, when somebody is like, I agree, or like, yeah, for sure. You're like, I know.
Now I know I can act this way. And you're looking for outside validation when you can find that internal validation, which by these standards would be your higher self.
Right. And then in reality, when you're thinking about it, if you're looking for some sort of validation, I feel like in some parts of you, you already know that you're wrong, because it's like, well, someone else has to tell me this, because like I know it's not really right, but if someone else feels that way, then it's got to be kind of right.
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 And that's like coming from me too, who just liked to be angry. I liked the way that it made me feel afterwards. So it's just like I'm angry for something and I'm immediately going to try and find validation for the fact that I'm angry. And then as soon as somebody's like, yeah, you're allowed to, exactly, and you get even more angry. It's like, wait, what? What? So it's like, again, I almost don't like to use the word ego because it feels, for some people, and for me, I'm going to say for some people, because for me, in the beginning, when I used it, it felt like a separate entity. It didn't feel like it was who I wanted to be, so you just end up letting it not be you. You're like, oh, no, that was my ego. You know what I mean? Remember me? Like, I literally just, like, as soon as I was starting the meditation process and I get mad, I'm like, oh, that's just my ego.
Yeah, you like, use, because there was
that's not helpful. It's not.
There was a lot of times where I would say something, that's just your ego talking. Mm-hmm. It's like, I literally would just get like sad, because it's just like,
and same thing for me. Like, I would get mad and I'd be like, oh, sorry, that was my ego. But it's just like, that's not an excuse for anything to have happened. Right. It's just like I was just learning at the time, creating that separation. But I feel like humans are good at using crutches. So if you're not going to stop using the crutch, then you just shouldn't start with it. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't keep the crutch. I immediately got rid of the crutch as soon as I figured out I was crutching. You know what I mean? But it's common that people just continue to use that because they're like, oh, now I have something else I can blame this on. And it's just like, you don't need validation anymore. That's my ego. You know what I mean? And you just stop there. So it's just like
that kind of was your validation.
Exactly. It's just like, oh, well, that wasn't
That's
me.
just who I
That
am.
wasn't me. That was just, you know what I mean? That was just a part of me that I can't seem to control.
Right.
And it's just like, but you can
that's
control
just who
it.
I
And
am.
you can do stuff about it. And it's just like, I still have an ego, but it's not, it's not what it was. It's completely changed.
It's like you're not using it for the negative validation.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
like you
need
to
identify
an ego.
who you are as a human being, and
Sometimes, not really. I try not to do that too much, to be quite honest. In the beginning I did, but I don't look for me. I feel like I don't look for me because I meditate every morning, and I ask for the right energies, and I'm given the right energies. Like I don't know how else to explain it. I asked to be away, and then I'm just that way. And it's not like it was instantaneous. It was a process. I'd go to work and I'd be like, oh, I'm getting tested nonstop. And it seems like when you first start meditating, it's just like you get tested way more. Like you thought you were getting tested before, and then you start to make the change.
Do you think it's because you're more aware of those tests? So
yeah,
it's like
but
they
that's how
seem
the
a
universe.
little stronger.
I don't think they seem stronger. I think when you become aware of the universe starts to get in synchronization with you, and when you're in that first switch over, your thoughts are all wonky, like all types of wonky, and that your thoughts matter.
Which is like, I'm focusing on a lot right now. Is like my thoughts to myself.
Yeah,
like
that's
way
where time gets wonky. That's when you're gonna get a bunch of tests.
And it's like the one thing, not the one thing, but like a big thing you focus on is like how you talk to yourself. Like I talk to myself negatively because I just like don't have confidence.
You don't talk to yourself negatively. You have spoken to yourself negatively in the past.
Right. Yeah, and I'm trying very hard to use the right words and be mindful of the words that I'm using, like not just for myself but just in general as a whole. Like it sounds crazy, but like one of the things, like any minor inconvenience at work, and it's like, oh, I want to kill myself, and it's like, oh my god, like why are you putting that out into the universe? Like why are you saying that? Like what? Like that's not really how you feel, but like it's a minor inconvenience, it's something small, and it's just like it made me feel better at the time, and then like 3 minutes later I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Wow,
like
it shouldn't even make you feel better at all.
like well, no, it shouldn't, but like at work sometimes people say those things.
No,
or
I know.
like so it's like when you're around it, it's just like a joke, like ha ha ha, but then like you really think about it and you're like, huh, oh gosh. Like that's not true. Like but again, it's that negative validation of like, well, they said
Somebody
it.
else feels like it too.
Right, and it's like
I'm
they're
not
saying
alone
it
here.
jokingly.
Why are people? We're connected.
Right.
That's another thing
Right.
with social constructs that kind of suck. Is like you just want to fit in sometimes,
Right.
and it's just like sometimes people do whatever they need to do to fit in. You know what I mean? So
Right. And literally,
it doesn't seem that harmful. You just kind of tag along with it.
Right. I remember looking at my coworker Jim one day and literally saying like, we got to stop saying that. Like that's not okay to say. And he's like, you're so right. Like we really shouldn't be saying that. And then a week later, another coworker of mine like brought up, I forget exactly what her words were that she says, but she's like, I don't need to be putting that out there. And it was like kind of equivalent to that. And it was like, I'm close with these two people. So it's like, it's like that alignment of like you start to like put that out there, and like there's other people are gonna come to that, inform to that, and just realize like the bigger picture. So it was cool to like see it happen, and it happens with us so much, so it's just nice. And that's another form of validation, like but positive validation, where it's like,
yeah, but even that you gotta be aware that like you shouldn't look at it as validation, in my personal opinion. You should just look at it as a synchronicity of the universe. Like, okay, we're all going towards positivity. Not like validation, just like,
not
okay,
validation, but
connectiveness. We're all getting
connectiveness
to the same goal here. Awesome.
Yeah, validation isn't the right word. Definitely like connected.
Synchronicity is far.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Matthew doesn't appreciate too much, but that's because he had some extreme experiences. I
Right.
couldn't imagine, especially not. I don't even know what type of mind state he was in at the time. You know what I mean? Like
Right. Also true.
crazy.
Also true.
But I like when things start aligning up. It feels good. It, I almost said it gives me validation.
Right. Yeah. But it just, like you said, it makes you aware of the connectiveness. I think that's the best way to word that.
I mean, I almost like using that word in this sense just because it helps me realize that the world is actually in synchronization. Things are actually connected. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a validation for the universe. Like, oh, we really might be all one. You know what I mean? It's just like it's towards my ultimate goal. So it's just like
right. Life.
it's an odd word, I guess.
Validation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you
Yeah.
just don't need validation from people, but validation in situations, I guess, is okay. You just don't need validation from another person.
True. I was gonna say valid.
I'm another person.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to end it. Do you agree?
I mean, I don't got nothing else to say.
Yeah, I
think.
feel like it would be a whole nother discussion of something else if we.
Well, I mean, we might have to do this one again. Well, it depends on how.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, I don't know if we're gonna release this one. Once I chop it up, I'll figure it out. But I'm just eager for the next one. Next one's gonna be about meditation, and I guess our journeys. But I'm just gonna say my journey because I'm just so excited.
Yeah.
Explain what the guy had going on.
Yeah. It will be cool for you to go in depth about it, and I can ask you, I feel like, a bunch more questions. Because I mean, I meditate, but I haven't had the experiences that you've had.
Yeah, because your goal wasn't my goal.
No,
your goal isn't my goal.
Right, and also like we've mentioned, like you've done this whole flip, and it was like.
Right, and I got. I'm gonna say it. I got validation from the universe. You know,
that like you were on the right path to do,
like legitimately.
Yeah.
Which is just wild.
Yeah. So, we'll stay tuned for next week.
Stay tuned. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We can do these more often. I gotta see how the audio comes out with him talking every 5 seconds and playing with his toys,
jamming cars in the back.
Yeah, I don't know how the sound's gonna be, but hopefully it's all right.
Also, depending on how you cut it, whatever, we can maybe cut out the first part.
The first explaining of the things.
Yeah, because it was
maybe.
Some of it you might be able to use, some of it you won't. But like you said, just we'll see what happens and we'll be back.
Blippy getting a little crazy.
Blippy
Alrighty.
Crazy.
It's been real, folks.
All right.
I didn't use my notes. That's good. I don't want to use notes.
Yeah.
I just want to be off the top. You know what I'm saying? All right.
Okay, bye.
Adios.